Hey, what happened to the internet? The TV's just buffering. Didn't you pay for it already? And I got a mail today. Insurance is due too. Did you see that?
What? Not again!
What if I told you? I stopped paying for everything in my marriage for 30 days without warning my husband, and what happened next changed how I saw our relationship forever. Most people don't realize what really happens when the invisible provider suddenly disappears. This is my story, and here is how it all panned out. I remember the exact moment it happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no thunderclap, no argument, no door slamming. It was a Tuesday morning in October, and I was standing at the kitchen counter in my fuzzy house slippers, holding a grocery receipt in my left hand and a lukewarm cup of coffee in my right. And something inside of me just shifted. The receipt was long, embarrassingly long, the kind that curls at the bottom like it's tired of itself. And as I stood there scanning every line item, the organic chicken thighs, the laundry detergent, the dish soap, the sparkling water Marcus loved but never once bought himself, the almond milk, the candles for the bathroom, the AAA batteries for the remote control he used more than anyone in this house. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Felt invisible. My name is Diane. Diane Elaine Okafor, 34 years old, married for 6 years to Marcus Jerome Okafor, mother to our 7-year-old daughter Amani, and a full-time project manager at a logistics firm downtown. On paper, I have everything. A good career, a beautiful child, a husband who is handsome and charming, and on the days he wants to be deeply loving. But somewhere between wedding vows and mortgage payments, I had become the invisible backbone of our household. The one who noticed when the paper towels were running low. The one who remembered that Amani needed new sneakers before picture day. The one who renewed the car insurance, scheduled the dentist appointments, bought the birthday cards for Marcus's mother, and yes, paid for the vast majority of everything that kept this family running. All while working a 45-hour week and pretending I wasn't exhausted. And Marcus? Marcus worked too. He had a good job as a sales manager at a tech company. He made good money. Not as much as me, but good money. The problem wasn't that he couldn't contribute. The problem was that somehow, over 6 years, we had both silently agreed without ever once saying it out loud that everything financial was my responsibility. I'm not even sure how it started. It crept up on us the way most dangerous things do. Quietly, gradually, so slowly you don't notice the water is boiling until you're already in it. In the early years of our marriage, we both contributed. We had a joint account. We went grocery shopping together on Saturday mornings, Amani in the cart, laughing about which cereal she could trick us into buying. We split dinners out, we talked about bills, it felt like a partnership. But then my career accelerated. I got promoted. My salary jumped. And at almost the same time, Marcus went through a rough patch at work, a company restructuring that left him in a lower-level role for almost a year. During that time, I stepped up. Of course I did. That's what you do for your spouse. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about stepping up sometimes. If you're not careful, you never get to step back down. The stepping up just becomes the standard. Your sacrifice becomes the baseline. And before you know it, you're standing in your kitchen at 7 in the morning, holding a $347 grocery receipt, feeling like a ghost in your own life. I set the receipt down on the counter next to Marcus's half-eaten bowl of oatmeal. The oatmeal I had made for him before he rushed out for his morning workout, and I looked around the kitchen. Really looked. The refrigerator I had bought when ours broke 2 summers ago. The dishwasher I had picked out. The candles flickering on the windowsill that I'd ordered from an Etsy shop because I wanted the house to smell like warm cedar and oranges. The Amani drawing stuck to the front of the fridge with magnets I'd picked up at the farmer's market. All of it mine. All of it managed by me. All of it funded mostly by me. And I thought about the conversation while Marcus and I had tried to have 3 months earlier, sitting in bed, me with my budgeting app open on my phone, him half watching some documentary where I had gently, carefully said, "Babe, I think we need to revisit how we're splitting household expenses." And he had nodded, said, "Yeah, for sure." And then the documentary had pulled his attention back in and the conversation had floated away like smoke. And I had let it. That was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. I had let it. I had raised the issue, watched it get dismissed, and instead of pushing harder, I had simply absorbed the weight again and kept moving. Because that's what I did. That's what I had always done. My mother, Gloria Jean Williams, God rest her soul, used to say, "A strong woman holds her family together." And I had taken that in, breathed it deep into my bones, let it define me. But standing at that kitchen counter, I started to wonder at what cost. Who was holding me together? And that's when the idea came to me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I read in a self-help book or saw in a TikTok comment section. It bubbled up from somewhere deep and tired and honest inside of me. It was so simple it almost made me laugh. What if I just stopped? What if for 30 days I stopped paying for everything? Not as punishment. Not to blow up my marriage, not to win some argument we'd never technically had, but just to see if Marcus noticed, to see how long it would take, to see what would happen when the invisible woman became visible by disappearing. I didn't tell him. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't send a passive-aggressive text. I didn't bring it up over dinner. I simply decided, quietly, privately, with a stillness that surprised even me. And I thought, 30 days. I'll give this 30 days. And whatever I see, whatever happens, I will finally know the truth about the dynamic I've been living in. I picked up my coffee, took a sip still warm enough, and looked out the kitchen window at the backyard where the oak tree was starting to drop its leaves. Amani loved jumping in those leaves. Every year I raked them into a pile for her on Saturday afternoons while Marcus watched football inside. This October I decided I would rake them for myself too. Day one started on a Wednesday, a perfectly ordinary Wednesday. Marcus kissed me on the cheek before he left for work, smelling like the cologne I'd bought him for Father's Day, and said, "Don't forget, I've got to work dinner Friday." And I nodded and smiled, and I did not offer to cover Amani's babysitter for the night. I did not automatically volunteer to handle the logistics of his absence the way I always did. I just nodded and smiled, and I held the secret close to my chest like a hand of cards. I wasn't ready to show yet. That evening, when I got home from work, I noticed we were out of dish soap. In the past, without thinking, I would have swung by the drugstore on my way home, grabbed the dish soap, the replacement sponge, probably a few other things I noticed while I was there. Some yogurt, maybe a new candle, and the whole thing would have cost me $40, and it wouldn't even have registered as a decision. It would have just been automatic, invisible, like everything else I did. But this time, I walked right past the drugstore. I came home, I put my work bag down, I changed into my comfortable clothes. I started Amani's bedtime routine, and the dishes sat in the sink without soap, and I rinsed mine with hot water and let them air dry, and I waited. Marcus did the dishes that night around 9 o'clock. He stood at the sink for a second, moved things around looking for the soap, and then called out, "Diane, we're out of dish soap." I was in the bedroom folding laundry. I paused. My whole body went still for just a moment. Then I called back perfectly pleasantly, and I kept folding laundry. I heard him pause, heard the water running, and then nothing. He washed what he needed to wash with just hot water and went back to the living room. I stood there with one of Amani's little dresses in my hands, and I felt something stir in my chest. Not triumph, not anger, something quieter than both. Something that felt a lot like the beginning of the truth. 30 days, I told myself. 30 days to find out who my husband thinks I am and who I'm finally ready to be. The first week was the week of small things, and I cannot overstate how much you learn about a person, about a relationship, about the power dynamics that live quietly beneath the surface of a marriage by watching what happens when the small things stop being handled. Wednesday rolled into Thursday. Thursday slid into Friday. And with each day, I kept my experiment going with a discipline that surprised me because I'd half expected to cave within 24 hours. I'm a fixer by nature. A problem identifier, a solution implementer, a list maker, and a checker offer. The urge to just handle things is so deeply embedded in who I am that restraining it felt physically uncomfortable, like holding my breath underwater. but I held. On Thursday morning, I made breakfast for Imani, her scrambled eggs with the little bit of pepper she liked, her orange juice in the yellow cup, and I packed her school bag and I dropped her off on my way to work. All of that I kept doing. Let me be clear about that. This experiment was never about my daughter. Imani was always taken care of, always loved, always had everything she needed. The 30 days were about what existed between me and Marcus, not what existed between me and my child. But the household, the running of the household that I stepped back from. Thursday evening, Marcus came home and mentioned casually that he'd noticed the refrigerator was getting kind of low. I was sitting on the living room floor doing a puzzle with Imani, and I looked up at him with the most serene expression I've ever arranged on my face and said, "Oh yeah?" And then I looked back down at the puzzle. The silence that followed was only about 4 seconds long, but I felt every single one of those seconds in my spine. Marcus stood in the kitchen for a moment, looked in the refrigerator, looked at me through the doorway, and then said, "I'll grab some things on my way home from the gym tomorrow." And I smiled genuinely, warmly, and said, "That sounds great, babe." He looked at me for a moment longer than usual, just a fraction, like something had registered that he couldn't quite name, and then he nodded and went to change out of his work clothes. That night, after Imani was asleep, I lay in bed journaling. I had decided to document every single day of the 30 days. Not in an angry scorekeeping way, but in a real, honest way. I wanted to capture what I felt, what I observed, what it all meant. I wrote. Day 2. He noticed the fridge. He offered to get groceries voluntarily for the first time in I cannot remember how long. I feel a complicated mix of things. Relief, sadness, a quiet kind of fury that's not loud enough to call fury but too real to call anything softer. Also, I feel awake. Like I've been sleepwalking through my own life and I just opened my eyes mid-step. Friday came and Marcus had his work dinner. He left at 6:30 in a sharp charcoal blazer, the one I'd helped him pick out at the mall last spring, and kissed me on the forehead and told me not to wait up. In the past, I would have arranged everything for Imani that night. Fed her, bathed her, gotten her to bed, cleaned the kitchen, prepped the coffee maker for the morning, and probably done a load of laundry on top of that. All of it, seamlessly, without Marcus having to think about a single piece of it. But this Friday, when my phone lit up at 8 with a text from my best friend Kezia asking if I wanted to drive over for a glass of wine and a ketchup, I texted back, "Yes, be there in 20, called the babysitter my expense, one of the few I kept, because Imani needed supervision and that was non-negotiable, and I went and sat on Kezia's porch and laughed for 2 hours about absolutely nothing important." Kezia is the one person I told about the 30 days. Not the full philosophy of it, but enough. I told her, I'm just stepping back, letting things run without me, seeing what happens. And Kezia, who has known me since we were in the same section of our freshman dorm at Howard University, put her wine glass down and looked at me with those sharp brown eyes of hers and said, "Diane, it's about time." She said it like she'd been waiting years to say it, and maybe she had. I drove home at 10:30 feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe years. There's something almost illicit about it, about doing something purely for yourself, something that is not in service of anyone else when your entire identity has been built around service. It felt a little like stealing. Stealing time, stealing space, and I was not sorry. Saturday was the first real test. Saturday mornings in our house had a rhythm that I had created, sustained, and maintained for 6 years. Wake up, make breakfast for everyone, do the grocery run, come home, clean the bathrooms, manage Imani's weekend activities, handle whatever administrative household task had been accumulating during the week. Marcus would sleep in until 9:30 or 10, come downstairs for the breakfast I'd made, eat, scroll his phone, watch whatever sport was on, and occasionally take Imani to the park in the afternoon if I explicitly mentioned that she hadn't been outside. This Saturday, I woke up at my usual time, made coffee, and then did something radical. I sat down at the kitchen table with my coffee and my journal and a novel I'd been trying to finish for 3 months, and I just sat. I didn't start breakfast. I didn't make a mental grocery list. I didn't wipe down the counters or check what Imani's schedule looked like. I sat in the quiet of the morning, and I read. And I drank my coffee while it was still hot, which almost never happened. Imani came downstairs at 7:45, still in her pajamas with her hair like a cloud around her head, and she climbed into my lap and asked what we were having for breakfast. And I wrapped my arms around her and said, "What do you want?" And she said, "Daddy's pancakes." And I kissed her on the head and said, "Then go wake up Daddy and ask him." The look on my daughter's face, curious, slightly surprised, like this was a new configuration of the universe, nearly broke me, because it made me realize she too had absorbed the pattern. She too had come to understand that Mommy handled mornings and food and needs, and Daddy was peripheral. She slid off my lap and padded down the hallway to our bedroom, and I heard her little voice saying, Daddy, wake up. I want pancakes, and Mommy said, ask you." There was a long pause. Then I heard Marcus's voice, groggy and warm, say, "Pancakes, huh?" And I heard the creak of the bed. And 5 minutes later, Marcus came shuffling into the kitchen in his sweatpants, rubbing his eyes, looked at me sitting at the table with my book, and we held each other's gaze for a moment. "You good?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, and smiled and turned a page. He made pancakes. Not as fluffy as mine. He always forgets to let the batter rest, but Imani ate them like they were the best thing she'd ever tasted because her daddy made them, and that made them magical. I watched the two of them from across the table and felt the whole complexity of my love for this man land on my chest like a warm, heavy stone, because I did love him. That was the part that made this so hard. I wasn't doing this because I'd stopped loving Marcus. I was doing this because I loved him, and I loved myself enough to finally demand the truth. By the end of week 1, the small tally in my journal looked like this. Marcus had voluntarily gone grocery shopping, something he had not done in over a year. He'd bought the dish soap. He'd made breakfast on Saturday and again on Sunday. He'd noticed that the hallway light bulb had gone out, and instead of leaving it for me to handle, had gone to the utility closet, found the replacement bulbs that I had bought and organized, and changed it himself. He'd picked up Imani from a playdate on Sunday afternoon without being asked, because I had made no indication that I would be doing it. These were small things, objectively small, but they were enormous. Because they proved something I had been too afraid to say out loud for years. He was capable. He was fully, completely, 100% capable. He just hadn't needed to be. Because I had always been there, a step ahead, invisible and efficient and quietly resentful, handling everything so he never had to. Week 1 ended on a Tuesday, and I sat at my kitchen counter, the same spot where I'd stood with that receipt 10 days earlier, and I wrote in my journal, "I'm not angry at Marcus. I'm angry at the version of me who decided that love meant disappearing. I built this, and now I'm watching what it looks like to take myself back. It's the most terrifying and the most alive I have felt in years." Now hold on a second, my dear, just a quick moment. If you're still watching, that tells me you're enjoying this, and I truly appreciate you being here. But let me share something that surprised me. Almost 98% of the people watching right now haven't subscribed yet. 98. That's like baking a whole cake and everyone enjoying a slice but nobody telling you it tastes good. So here's my little request. Go ahead and tap that subscribe button. It's completely free, no fees, no strings attached, and it simply makes sure you don't miss any new videos I put out. And if this video has been helpful or enjoyable, give it a like as well. It really helps the channel grow and reach more wonderful people like you. Alright, thank you for indulging me for a moment. Let's carry on. Week 2 was different from week 1 in a very particular way. The novelty wore off. In the first week, Marcus's adjustments had the quality of improvisation, spontaneous, even slightly charming. Like a man discovering he could cook his own breakfast and finding it mildly enjoyable. It was new. There was a lightness to it. Week 2 was where the friction began. And friction, I've come to believe, is where you find out who someone actually is. It started on Wednesday, the 8th day. I was working from home. Our company allowed 2 remote days a week, and Marcus had taken Imani to school that morning, which was now becoming part of the new routine that was quietly forming itself around my absence. Around 10 o'clock, he called me from his office. "Hey," he said. "So Imani's fall showcase is coming up at the school. Did you sign up to bring anything?" I leaned back in my home office chair and chose my words carefully. "I didn't this year," I said. "Why?" "I just got an email from her teacher about it. They need parent volunteers to bring food. I thought maybe you'd—" He stopped himself. There was a pause. "Actually, let me look at the sign-up sheet. I'll handle it." My heart did something small and complicated in my chest. I said, "That sounds great," and we hung up. He signed us up to bring fruit salad. He texted me a screenshot of the confirmation, and I sat at my desk and stared at that screenshot for a long moment, because in 6 years, Marcus had never once signed us up for a school event on his own. I had always done it. I had always carried the mental load of keeping track of Imani's school calendar, teacher names, classroom expectations, social logistics, all of it in my head like a second job nobody paid me for. But Thursday is where the first real crack showed. I came home from work to find the kitchen in a state that could charitably be described as chaotic. Marcus had gotten home before me, which was unusual, and had apparently attempted to cook dinner in admirable effort, but had used nearly every pot we owned to make what I could only identify as a pasta situation that had gone somewhat sideways. The counter was covered in flour. I didn't know we'd even opened. There was tomato sauce on the backsplash, and the smoke detector had clearly been triggered at some point because the kitchen window was cracked open in October. Marcus was standing in the middle of it all, looking, for the first time, genuinely stressed. And Imani was sitting at the kitchen table with her homework, completely unbothered by the chaos around her, eating a piece of bread and butter like a tiny queen. I set my work bag down by the door. I looked at the kitchen. I looked at Marcus, and I said warmly and sincerely, "Dinner smells interesting." And I went upstairs to change. From the bedroom I could hear him cleaning up, could hear the water running, the clink of dishes. I changed into my comfortable clothes, washed my face, and sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, breathing. Here is what I want you to understand about this moment, because I think it's the most important thing about week 2. The old Diane would have gone downstairs immediately, would have apologized for not being the one to cook, would have gently taken over the cleanup while simultaneously praising his efforts so he didn't feel bad, would have maneuvered the kitchen back into order so quietly and efficiently that it would have felt like it never happened, and Marcus would have watched a bit of TV and gone to bed feeling fine. And old Diane would have gone to bed feeling invisible again. But I sat on the edge of the bed, and I breathed, and I let the uncomfortable thing be uncomfortable without rushing to smooth it over. Dinner was actually decent, by the way. He'd made a pasta with a jar sauce he'd found in the pantry, and some Italian sausage from the freezer. And it wasn't what I would have made, but it was hot, and it was food, and Imani ate it and said, "Daddy, this is good," with the complete sincerity of a 7-year-old who doesn't traffic in flattery, and Marcus had stood a little taller for it. After dinner, after Imani was in bed, Marcus and I sat on the couch with the TV on low, and he turned to me and said something that caught me off guard. "You seem different lately." I looked at him, kept my expression neutral. "Different? How?" He thought about it for a moment. He has a habit of turning his wedding ring slowly when he's thinking an unconscious thing he's done for years. He did it now. "I don't know. Like you're somewhere else. Like your mind is elsewhere." I held his gaze. "I'm right here," I said. And I was. That was the truth. I was more present in my own life than I had been in years. I was simply no longer present in the invisible labor of running his. He nodded slowly, like he wasn't quite satisfied with the answer but didn't know what other question to ask. Then he reached over and took my hand, and we watched television in a silence that was neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, just honest. Friday of week 2 brought the first genuine conflict. Marcus had plans on Saturday morning, a golf outing with some colleagues that he'd been looking forward to for weeks. He came to me on Friday night and said, "So tomorrow I'll be out from 8 to probably around 2 or 3. Can you handle getting Amani to her dance class?" He asked it like it was nothing, like I was a resource he was checking availability for. And I felt it. That old familiar feeling of being scheduled, of having my Saturday automatically designated as support personnel for the family's logistics, while his Saturday was simply his. The old me would have said, "Of course, no problem," before the sentence was even finished. This time I paused, let a real pause sit in the room, and then I said, "I actually have plans Saturday morning." Marcus blinked. "Plans?" "I'm meeting Kezia for a walk at the park," I said. Which was true. I had made that plan specifically for this Saturday because I had decided that I would also start scheduling things for myself the way Marcus had always naturally scheduled things for himself. Oh. He looked genuinely surprised. Not upset surprised. Like the concept of my Saturday morning having its own agenda was a new variable he was encountering. What about Amani's dance class? "She has to be there at 10, I said. "You'll be back by then if you leave for golf at 8. He looked at me, and again that fractional pause like something was computing behind his eyes. "Okay," he said finally. "Yeah, I'll take her." He said it like it was a decision he was making, which it was. It was the first time in Amani's year of dance classes that Marcus had ever taken her. I had taken her every single Saturday to the same studio 20 minutes from our house for 11 months. He took her that Saturday. When I came home from my walk with Kezia, flushed from the cool October air, hair up, feeling alive, in a way I'd forgotten I was capable of, I found Marcus and Amani in the living room watching a movie together. Amani tucked under his arm with a juice box, the remnants of a snack Marcus had apparently assembled on the coffee table. He looked up when I walked in, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. It wasn't guilt exactly, but it was something adjacent to recognition, like he was looking at me and seeing for the first time, or for the first time again, someone who had a self. "How was the walk?" he asked. "It was wonderful," I said. And I meant it. Week 2 ended with me sitting in the bath on Sunday night, long bath, good book, door closed, candles lit, and I heard Marcus put Amani to bed on his own. Heard him doing her whole routine, the teeth-brushing negotiation, the 3 books or 2 arguments, the prayers, the goodnight songs. I heard his deep voice carrying the melody of a lullaby through the wall, and I felt tears run into the bathwater, and I wasn't entirely sure what they were for. They were for the beauty of it, and for the years of it that had been missing. And for the question I still wasn't sure I had the answer to was this: a man capable of being a true partner who had simply never been invited to step up? Or was he a man who would step up only when forced, who would only see me when I made myself temporarily unavailable? I didn't know yet. But I was going to find out. If week 1 was the quiet beginning and week 2 was the opening friction, week 3 was where things started to get loud in the way that only real marriages get loud. Not with screaming, but with the deafening noise of 2 people circling around a truth that neither one has said yet. Marcus was picking up more. That was real, and it was undeniable. He was buying groceries regularly now. Not always the right things, not always with the kind of deliberate strategy I used when I shopped, but he was doing it. He had taken over the school drop-offs every other day. He was more present with Amani in a way that made her noticeably happier, more attached to him, more likely to run to him with her small girl problems and discoveries. And yet, something was building in him. I could feel it the way you can feel a weather change in your joints before it arrives, before you can see it, you know. It's coming. He was quieter in the evenings, more observant of me in a way that felt careful, almost strategic, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. On Tuesday of week 3, he tried to hand the puzzle back to me. He came home from work and set a piece of mail on the counter, our OA statement, which was due that Friday, and said offhand, "Hey, the whole bill's there. I think it's due soon. I looked at the envelope. I looked at him. I said pleasantly and went back to what I was doing, which was sitting at the kitchen table reviewing a project proposal from work. There was a pause. I wasn't sure if you wanted to set up autopay or just... Marcus, I said gently, looking up, you can handle it. He stared at me for a moment, then said, yeah, okay. Picked up the envelope, went to his office. He paid it. I found the confirmation email later. I wasn't checking on him. It just came through on the joint account notification, and I sat with that small fact the way you sit with something unexpected and significant. He'd never paid the HOA. Not once in 3 years. I had always handled it the way I handled every recurring financial obligation, automatically and visibly, without comment. Thursday of week 3 is the day things broke open. Not catastrophically. Not yet. But they broke open in the way a seam splits. You don't always hear it, but suddenly you feel the air coming through. I was in the kitchen after dinner, having a phone call with my sister Renee, who lives in Atlanta. Marcus was in the living room. Imani was in bed. The kitchen light was low and warm, and I was leaning on the counter, half listening to Renee talk about her new apartment, half present in my own thoughts, when Marcus came to the kitchen doorway. He stood there for a moment, waiting for me to wrap up my call, and when I made eye contact and gave him the 1-minute finger, he nodded. I finished with Renee, hung up, and looked at him. What's up? I said. He crossed his arms, uncrossed them, crossed them again. Marcus does this when he's nervous, this choreography of his hands that gives away everything his face is trying to hide. Are you okay? He said. I'm fine, I said. Why? Because you've been different, he said, and I've been trying to figure out why, and I can't figure it out, and it's starting to bother me. I kept my posture open, my voice steady. Different, how? I don't know, Diane. He stopped, tried again. You're not here, you're somewhere else, you're waiting for something. The accuracy of that last sentence hit me square in the chest, but I kept my face still. I'm right here, I said for the second time in 2 weeks. Are you? He took a step closer. His voice was lower now. Not angry, searching. Because it feels like, and I don't know how to say this without it sounding crazy, but it feels like you've stopped. Like you've stopped running things. And I don't know if that means you're depressed, or if something happened at work, or if something is wrong with us. And there it was. The first real crack of honesty in 3 weeks. I looked at this man, this infuriating, capable, charming, oblivious, loving man I had chosen 6 years ago in a church full of people who loved us, and I felt the weight of everything I had been carrying settle across my shoulders one last time before I put it down. But it wasn't time yet. 22 days in, 8 more to go. Nothing is wrong with me, I said carefully, and then, because I did believe it more than ever, I think maybe something is finally right with me. He stared at me for a long moment, and then quietly he said, I feel like I'm missing something. You might be, I said, and I touched his face gently with my whole hand against his cheek, and I said, but I promise you, Marcus, that when the time is right we will talk about it. Really talk. He leaned into my hand the way he used to in the early years, closed his eyes for just a second, and when he opened them, something had changed in them. Some defensiveness had dissolved, and underneath it was something more vulnerable and real. Okay, he said. Okay, I said. And we went to bed, and he held me close in the dark, and I lay there thinking about all the ways love can be real and insufficient at the same time. And I thought about my mother's words, a strong woman holds her family together, and I thought, yes, but who gets to hold her? By Sunday of week 3, Imani said something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. We were at the park, all 3 of us. Rare and Marcus was pushing her on the swings while I sat on a bench with a coffee, just watching. And Imani, swinging high, hair flying out behind her, called out to no one in particular, I like when Daddy does things. Marcus laughed, kept pushing. And I smiled. and felt a grief I didn't have a name for yet. Because Amani liked when Daddy did things because Daddy doing things was notable. It was special because it was infrequent. And Mommy doing everything was so constant, so reliable, so utterly built into the fabric of Amani's universe that it was invisible to her the same way oxygen is invisible. Children absorb what they live in. And I thought, what is my daughter learning about womanhood from watching me? What story about her own worth, her own limits, her own right to rest and reciprocity is she absorbing right now? That thought, more than any receipt or unpaid bill or unacknowledged grocery run, is the thought that sealed my decision about what I was going to say when the 30 days were done. Day 30 was a Saturday. I had planned it. I had actually planned the day the way you plan something important, with intention, with care, with the understanding that what you are about to do will change something permanently. Not destroy it, change it. And that change would require a container, a space that was calm enough to hold whatever came out of it. I arranged for Amani to spend the day at my sister-in-law Tasha's house. Tasha was Marcus's younger sister, and she and Amani were close. Amani loved going to Tasha's because Tasha had 2 dogs and a trampoline in the backyard, and basically let Amani run feral in the best possible way for an afternoon. I called Tasha midweek and simply said, "Can Amani come to you Saturday? Marcus and I need a day." And Tasha, who reads situations with a precision that borders on supernatural, said, "Of course, bring her over at 9. Saturday morning arrived gray and still. October almost finished now, the oak tree in the backyard almost bare. I made coffee for both of us. I had never stopped doing that. It was less a service and more a ritual, the way I started my own day. And Marcus came downstairs to find me sitting at the kitchen table with 2 cups and nothing else. No laptop, no phone, no book. Just me and the coffee and the quiet. He stopped when he saw me. Something in the quality of that stillness must have told him, because his face shifted not into alarm but into a kind of readiness. He came and sat down across from me, wrapped both hands around his coffee mug and waited. I looked at him for a moment. I had rehearsed this conversation in my journal for 30 days. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And yet, sitting across from him in the October morning, in the kitchen of the house we had built together, looking at the face I had loved for almost a decade, the rehearsed version dissolved entirely. What came out instead was just the truth, plain and unadorned. 30 days ago, I said, I stopped paying for everything. He went very still. I stopped buying the groceries. I stopped paying the household bills unless my name was specifically on them. I stopped restocking the supplies. I stopped booking appointments, signing us up for events, managing everything that keeps this family running. I didn't tell you. I didn't announce it. I just stopped. And I watched. The silence that followed was the longest of our marriage. Marcus stared at me. I watched the information land. Watched it travel across his face in waves, like a stone dropped in still water. First confusion. Then a dawning comprehension. Then something that looked, just briefly, almost like embarrassment. Started. Let me finish, I said. Not harshly, but firmly, the way you speak when you have earned the right to be heard. I've been trying to have this conversation for years. Not always out loud, not always directly, but in the ways I raised it and then dropped it when you didn't engage. In the ways I would hint at being exhausted and you would say, "Get some rest," without connecting that to why I was exhausted. I let that happen. I am not putting all of this on you, Marcus. I built the dynamic too. But somewhere in the building of it, I disappeared. And I needed to know if you would notice. Did I? He said. His voice was careful, quiet. You noticed something, I said. You called it me being different. You said I seemed like I was waiting for something. I paused. What I was actually doing was showing up for myself for the first time in years. And what you were actually doing, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely, was showing up too. You started grocery shopping. You started taking Amani to her dance class. You paid the hoe. You made dinner. You did bedtime. You did things you are absolutely capable of doing that you had simply stopped doing because I was always there to do them. He set his coffee mug down, looked at his hands, did the wedding ring rotation around and around and around. "How long has this been building?" he asked. He wasn't being defensive. He was genuinely asking with a humility I hadn't seen from him in this kind of context before. "A long time," I said, honestly. Long enough that I stopped being able to see myself clearly. Long enough that when I stood in this kitchen 30 days ago with a grocery receipt in my hand, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I had done something just for me. Not for Amani, not for you, not for the house, just for me. He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I heard a car pass outside, heard the neighbor's dog bark twice and go silent. Then Marcus said something, and it was the thing that neither destroyed us nor saved us but cracked us open into something truer than we had been before. He said, "I think I let myself not see it, because seeing it meant I had to reckon with it, and reckoning with it meant admitting that I had been comfortable, in a way I shouldn't have been comfortable in." He looked up at me. "I told myself I was a good husband because I loved you, because I was faithful, because I worked hard, but I think I used those things to avoid asking myself what I was actually contributing at home. And the answer to that question was not enough." I looked at this man and felt the ground shift under both of us simultaneously. Because that was the thing I hadn't known if Marcus was capable of. Not the groceries or the dish soap or the hoe payment. Those were logistics. What I hadn't known was whether he could do this. Sit in front of the truth without deflecting, without making me the problem, without reframing his comfort as my problem to solve. He could. He did. And it changed everything. Not in the way fairy tales change things. Not in the way movies change things, where there's a swell of music and someone makes a grand gesture and everything is suddenly fixed. It changed things the way real things change, quietly, at the root, in a way that would take months to fully see and years to fully understand. I reached across the table and took his hands in both of mine. "I don't want a husband who helps me," I said. "I want a husband who owns this house with me, who owns this family with me, not as my assistant, as my partner." He turned my hands over in his, looked at them for a moment. "You've been carrying this whole time," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. "And I let you." "Yes," I said again. He exhaled, long and slow, like he was letting something go that he'd been holding without knowing he was holding it. "I'm sorry, Diane," he said. And it wasn't the performative sorry of someone trying to end a fight. It was the stripped-down, real sorry of someone who had just seen something clearly for the first time and was sorry they hadn't seen it sooner. "I know," I said. We sat in that kitchen for 2 more hours. We talked in a way we hadn't talked in years, really talked, without the television on, without phones in our hands, without the ambient noise of the household drowning out the deeper things. He told me about the pressure he felt to perform in his career. The quiet shame of earning less than me that he had never once articulated, the way that shame had made him retreat. Not consciously, but in the way wounded animals retreat. And I told him about my mother's voice in my head, about the strong woman mythology I had swallowed whole, about how I had confused self-erasure with love for so long that they had become nearly indistinguishable. We ordered lunch. We didn't go anywhere. We just stayed in that kitchen and talked and ate and occasionally laughed, which surprised both of us, the laughter, but love does that sometimes. It finds you even in the hard conversations. That afternoon we drove together to pick up Amani from Tasha's, and when our daughter ran toward us across Tasha's front lawn with her arms out, her hair wild, smelling like dog and autumn air, Marcus swept her up and held her high, and she shrieked with delight. He carried her to the car, and I walked beside him and he reached over with his free hand and took mine. And I held on. I want to tell you that everything changed overnight, that the 30 days were a magic key and we unlocked the door and walked through into a perfectly balanced, mutually reciprocal partnership and never looked back. But I respect you too much to tell you that story, because that's not what happened. What happened was something more ordinary and more miraculous at the same time. We did the work. November was a transition month. We sat down together. Actually, sat down with a shared document open on the laptop at the kitchen table, and we mapped out the household. Every recurring task, every financial responsibility, every logistical function of our family's life. We put it all on the screen where we could both see it, and for the first time in 6 years, Marcus could see in total what the running of our household actually looked like. He went quiet when he saw the full list. "I had no idea," he said. "I know," I said. We divided it. Not 50-50 in a rigid legalistic way. That wasn't the point. The point was equity. The point was mutual awareness. Some things made more sense for me to own, some things made more sense for him to own, and some things we decided to do together on Saturday mornings the way we used to Imani in the cart, arguing about cereal. He set up a household account that we both contributed to equally for shared expenses. He automated the HOA. He took over Imani's school communications as the primary contact, something that blew her teacher so far out of her routine that she called me to check if everything was okay, which Marcus and I laughed about for days. But the more important changes were the invisible ones, the ones that happened in the space between us. Marcus started asking questions. Not performing helpfulness, actually asking questions. "What do you need this week? What's heavy right now? What can I take?" It was halting at first, unpracticed, like someone speaking a language they'd been studying but never spoken aloud. But it got easier with repetition. It became a vocabulary we were building together. And I started letting things be imperfect. This was my work. The work of releasing the need to do everything my way to the standard I had set on the timeline I had established. When Marcus grocery shopped and came home with the wrong brand of something, I said thank you and used it. When his version of cleaning the kitchen didn't match mine, I found my way to being grateful for the effort without correcting the method. This was genuinely hard. Harder in some ways than the 30 days themselves, because it required me to examine the ways my perfectionism had also been a mechanism of control, a way of keeping myself indispensable by ensuring nobody else could do things quite right. December came, and with it a moment I hadn't expected. Marcus's company had their holiday party. He came home from work one evening and said, "Hey, do you want to come to my work thing on the 14th? And I said yes, and he booked a babysitter voluntarily, without being asked. Booked and paid for the babysitter, and on the night of the party he put on his charcoal blazer, and I put on the red dress I hadn't worn in 2 years, and he stood in the doorway of our bedroom and looked at me and said, "Diane, you look incredible." And I looked in the mirror at myself, at this woman who had stood in her kitchen slippers 30 days, 60 days ago, invisible and tired and resentful, and I thought, "I see you now. You came back." We went to the party. We danced. At one point, standing in the middle of the dance floor with his arms around me, he leaned down and said against my hair, "I'm proud of you, you know." I pulled back and looked at him. "For what?" "For that conversation, for being brave enough to show me what I was missing." He paused. "I was missing so much, Diane." I leaned my head against his chest and felt the bass of the music and the warmth of the room and thought, yes. And now you're not. I should tell you this because I think it's important. The 30 days almost ended in a very different place. There was a moment, around day 25, where I had genuinely sat on the floor of my home office with my back against the desk and asked myself if this marriage was salvageable. Not because Marcus had done anything dramatic, but because the accumulated weight of 6 years of invisibility had, in that moment, felt like a permanent condition, like something had been broken beyond repairing. I had called Kezia from that floor. She had talked me through it with the steady, warm practicality that is her greatest gift. She said, "You haven't given him the full information yet, Diane. You can't know what he'll do with what he doesn't know. Give him the information, then you'll know." She was right. She usually is. What I know now, 4 months after those 30 days, is this. Marcus is not a villain. He was a man operating comfortably in a dynamic I had helped to create that served him without him ever examining the cost of that service to me. when I changed my contribution to the dynamic, and then, ultimately, when I finally gave him the full information. He chose to change too. Not perfectly, not without stumbles and setbacks and moments where old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But he chose. And that choice, the choosing, the ongoing daily choosing, is what a marriage actually is. I look back at that grocery receipt sometimes, the one that started this whole thing. I still have it. I found it a few weeks after that final conversation, still on the counter where I'd left it, and I folded it and put it in the back of my journal. Not as a trophy or as evidence in some ongoing case against my husband, but as a reminder. A reminder of the morning I decided to stop disappearing. Of the 30 days I gave myself permission to be seen. Of the woman who walked to the kitchen counter in her fuzzy slippers and for the first time in years chose herself. I kept that receipt for the same reason. People keep the stones that made them stumble. Not to throw at anyone, just to remember the terrain, and to know how far you've walked since. My name is Diana Lane Okafor. I'm 34 years old. I'm a project manager, a mother, a wife, a daughter, a friend. And I'm finally visible. To myself, to my husband, to my daughter who is watching everything and learning what women are allowed to be. Doing something different now. And so it turns out am I. Thank you for watching this story. If any part of it felt familiar, if you have ever stood in your own kitchen, invisible and exhausted, wondering if anyone would notice if you just stopped, then this story was for you. Subscribe if this is a space you want to stay in, and leave a comment below telling me what would you do if you stopped paying for everything for 30 days. I would genuinely love to know.